The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, the second in our new webinar series focused on the COVID-19 crisis and its wider impact on the aviation and travel industry. My name is Daniel Boyle, and I am the Director of Transport here at Terrapin UK. I'd just like to say thank you for the response to last week's webinar. We had quite a few hundred people joining live and a lot of people requesting the recording. That recording is still available on the World Aviation Festival website. So if you'd like to hear the webinar last week with John Strickland, please go to the event website there. I'd also just like to reiterate that our thoughts, obviously, during these difficult times, do go out to the airlines, the airports, and the wider supply chain that has been deeply affected by this crisis. And that's why we've launched this series, to help keep the industry up to date with the event that is kind of constantly evolving, and it's obviously an unprecedented situation. So bringing together industry experts from various regions who can give you an update on the state of play at time of publishing. Obviously, this is a constantly evolving crisis. Today, we're going to be covering the USA. The next in the series, we'll be covering the APAC region. That will take place next Tuesday, the 14th of April, and is going to be hosted by Cheng Li from the IAR. And then the following week, we welcome Shashank Nigam from Simply Flying, who will be hosting a slightly different session, looking at how can airlines restore brand confidence through the COVID-19 crisis. And you can sign up to all the webinars online at the World Aviation Festival website, and you'll be able to see some of the new webinars that we're scheduling at the moment. We are still developing content and schedules for those, so if you are interested in hosting or joining a webinar, please feel free to contact me directly at daniel.boyle@terrapin.com. Okay, so let's get started. Last week we had a lot of questions, and we'd like that again. So please submit your questions during the presentation, and I'll follow up afterwards to try and ask Henry as many questions as possible. If we do run out of time, Henry is more than happy to get in touch via email. So please just make sure that you leave your email address at the end of your question. Okay, so we're honoured to be joined by Henry today. He is a World Aviation Festival regular and a genuine industry thought leader. He's known as a veteran prognosticator, so he's the perfect candidate to give us some indication, hopefully, of where we might end up coming out of this crisis. So a big welcome to Henry Harteveldt.
Daniel, thank you. Well, hello everybody, and good morning from San Francisco, California. It is a great pleasure to be with everyone. Daniel, I thank you and your colleagues at Terrapin for inviting me to be part of this. I extend my thoughts to everyone out there who is either affected by the virus or knows someone who is. All of us, I think, join together in hoping that we find ways to defeat this and that we defeat it thoroughly and swiftly. Obviously, we are all trying to navigate ourselves through something very, very difficult. I appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective from Atmosphere on the USA. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Atmosphere Research, we are a travel industry strategic market research and advisory firm. We are now almost 9 years old. We are importantly independent, objective, and unbiased. No one buys our opinions. We don't do public pay-for-play research. We do commissioned research, but that is for clients. Our research tends to focus on a variety of commercial topics, including consumer insights, distribution, digital strategy, loyalty, the passenger experience, retailing strategy, and more. We are all on an unusual odyssey that none of us expected to be on. I thought that this image just summed up everything. We went into 2020 with an expectation that it would be a good, possibly great year for our companies and our industry, full of optimism. 2020, start of a new decade, roaring 20s and all of that. And what happened is everything has gone sideways. We are seeing something where a virus has been found now in more than 200 countries, far too many people made ill, far too many people who have suffered, and obviously an enormous impact on our industry. And it's my hope to at least share our thoughts on what we see going on and what we think will happen. Latest data from the TSA here in the US, airport passenger traffic is down 95% based on people screened at US airports, and that's as of Sunday. By the way, the link to this is at the bottom of the slide, so when you get the slides, you'll be able to go to the TSA to take a look at this, which is updated daily. This is absolutely unheard of outside of 9/11. But again, very different circumstances from 9/11 when the US closed its airspace and the rest of the world continued to operate. Obviously, we are being told do not travel if it's not essential. More than 90% now of the US is covered by a shelter in place or stay at home order, either at the state level or the city level. And again, that is just massive. You even have some states that have restrictions on people coming into the state from across state borders, something we've never seen before in the US. The virus is destroying US unemployment. It is estimated the US unemployment rate may exceed 13%, possibly approaching 14%. In the past 2 weeks, more than 10 million people in the US have applied for unemployment benefits here. We will get an update today or sometime this week on latest data. More than 700,000 jobs reported to be lost, and that is expected to climb. U.S. income, this is data from the Federal Reserve, may fall as much as 50% within the next few months. The St. Louis Federal Reserve, which is a no pun intended, wealth of great resources on the U.S. economy, states that the U.S. normally produces $5 trillion of income a quarter. It's different from GDP. But with shelter-in-place orders and a national focus on essential product manufacturing, shutdown of non-essential manufacturing, and so on, it's expected that income may fall as much as 50%. But the question we all have is, how long does the U.S. remain at that level? And is that 50% level really accurate? Would it be better or would it be worse? And better is certainly going to be relative. If it's 45%, that's better, but that's still devastating. Something I heard from a former FDA commissioner over the weekend, a comment that until we have a virus treatment, 20% of the US economy is at risk. And I think this is very important for how we need to rethink the recovery from this, because this is not 9/11, this is not H1N1 or SARS or MERS or other epidemics that we've seen. This is not your typical recession. What the gentleman said is we're not going to see a V-shaped recovery or a quick snapback absent the ability to get a highly effective drug in the hands of doctors that can mitigate the risk. Absent that, the US will be an 80% economy. That's frightening. Data from Bain Consulting shows that younger and older workers are already more likely to have lost work due to COVID-19. At the bottom bar here are people who, the percent of people who have no impact. But as you can see, except for the purple at the top, almost everybody has, and it's people ages 18 to 29 and 65 plus that have reported either a reduction in income, laid off, or that they work for companies that have closed. And of course, one big question is how many businesses in the US that have closed will come back. This is also not something that is affecting just lower income workers. What's interesting about this pandemic is the economic impact it is taking. It is not just lower income, but it is also middle income workers who are feeling the brunt of it, and even higher income workers are feeling the brunt of this. 65% of people earning incomes over $100,000 a year, and that's household income, I believe, are saying that they are feeling some kind of an effect here. So that's going to have a massive effect on the U.S. economy. Now, again, the St. Louis Federal Reserve has a really interesting way of looking at the risk of unemployment. They have taken a look at professions and divided them into what they call low risk of unemployment and high risk of unemployment. These aren't guarantees. Anybody is at risk for losing their job, and hopefully more people than expected will keep them, especially with U.S. government aid starting to flow through the country. But 54% of the U.S. population is, according to the St. Louis Fed, at low risk of unemployment. People who work in low risk of unemployment jobs have work in what might be considered essential functions, medical, food prep and delivery, people who can work from home, salaried workers. Maybe they don't work from home or in essential jobs, but they are some kind of a professional role. Those who are at high risk of unemployment tend to be more hourly workers in non-essential production, jobs that might be installation, repair, some other things. And obviously, this can vary. On the right is a map of the U.S. And again, this is St. Louis Fed data for state levels. The three states in red, Nevada, Indiana, and West Virginia, have the worst risk in terms of low risk of unemployment. So they are the worst. The three, Massachusetts, the Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, and the state of Maryland are the three highest performers. So in other words, 60% of Massachusetts residents work in jobs that have low risk of unemployment. That also means 40% of the state works in jobs that have high risk of unemployment. The states that are in blue are states, again, low risk of unemployment. These are states with major airline hubs. Texas has Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth. Florida has Miami, Fort Lauderdale, the New York State, California, obviously with the Bay Area and LA and so on. The good news for us is based on our research from 2019, most U.S. airline passengers appear to have jobs that are at low risk of unemployment. Again, no guarantee that these folks won't suffer or haven't already suffered. But among business travelers, our research shows 72% have some type of a professional job, which is more likely to put them into a low risk of unemployment. 58% of leisure passengers have a professional job, again, more likely to be at low risk of unemployment. And the U.S. airline passenger tends to earn an above average income. Now that may, I won't say it will, it may bode well for when recovery occurs. The U.S. Average income is just over $63,000, that's household level. For a leisure traveler, it's about a third higher at just under $95,000 and just over $105,000 a year for a business traveler. Again, we are all feeling the pain here in the U.S. No one is going to be, I should say very few people will be immune to it, but hopefully the U.S. airline passenger will be better positioned in terms of what they do, savings, investments, and other financial assets to help them lead the industry when we come out of this. The U.S. airline industry is operating in a highly, highly dynamic environment. The White House has apparently been discussing on an almost daily basis whether to ban U.S. travel. Yesterday at the daily White House briefing, the president said that he doesn't think that they will do so now because airlines are scaling back flights, but he recognized the essential work all airlines are doing here. Secretary of the Treasury, Steven Mnuchin, said airlines need to fly last week. There has been some discussion, apparently, of would airlines in the U.S. contemplate getting antitrust immunity to consolidate with multi-carrier code sharing. Think of it as John Ostrower called it the Uber pool of airlines, where, for example, American might operate a flight, but it could be code shared by Delta, United, and other airlines. Obviously, that would be a difficult thing to do in terms of logistics and how do you allocate seats and pricing and everything like that, but it shows the creativity that the airline is willing to consider. We're also seeing a lot of airlines voluntarily restrict flying into so-called hot zones. The city of Miami mayor requested closing Miami International Airport. That hasn't happened. I don't think it will. American and United over the weekend drastically cut their New York schedules, and Spirit Airlines temporarily suspended its service to New York. The U.S. CARES Act that was recently passed in the Congress includes $58 billion of financial support for the U.S. airline industry. $50 billion of that is cash and loans allocated to the U.S. passenger airlines, $4 billion for cargo airlines, and $3 or $4 billion for industry contractors. The terms are contentious, and I want to take a moment to discuss this. There's also ambiguous language. The priority filing deadline was last Friday afternoon, and so far 7 airlines have applied: Alaska, Allegiant, American, Delta, Hawaiian, JetBlue, and United. So I want to take a moment to discuss this. I know someone who was personally involved in advising Mnuchin and Senator Pat Toomey about this, and I've spoken with airlines about this. The terms are contentious because of the ambiguity. The bill asks or says that the government may request equity, warrants, and other financial instruments in exchange for the cash, in exchange for the loans. It also requires airlines to provide some level of service to the cities on their route networks. My understanding from talking with the person involved in this is that the government doesn't want to nationalize airlines. They want to be sure that taxpayer money is not going to be wasted. They have looked at the U.S. auto industry bailout from 2008, which did well in terms of GM. They want to be sure that the government will be paid back to some extent and that taxpayers will be protected in the event of a slower than anticipated recovery. They want the workers to get money. They want to keep people employed or at least getting a paycheck. Service levels, the way I understand this, as after speaking with some airlines, is that an airline would have to maintain a token level of service to a city. That could be potentially 1 to 2 flights a week, something that is deemed reasonable based on that airline's existing service to a destination. So if an airline is flying somewhere daily, the Treasury Department or Transportation Department, excuse me, may want that airline to fly there, let's say 3 times a week if it's not a very profitable market, but they want some kind of presence there. If the airline is serving that city perhaps just once a week, the government may say that's okay. You can continue to serve it once a week if that is what you normally do. All of these discussions are individual. It is not a hard and fast template, and what comes out of this will be different for each airline. We have seen, I should say, a massive number of U.S. airlines aircraft temporarily grounded. We estimate that at least 25 aircraft grounded from Alaska. They've not published anything official. American has said they're grounding at least 450, Delta 600, Hawaiian, we estimate 16. United has grounded more than 400 airplanes. We think further groundings are likely to occur before we start to see any of these parked airplanes return back into scheduled service. And this is data from Cirium, the folks who bring you DIO and other great data products. They were kind enough to run this for me. These are year-over-year seat changes. Now, they ran this for me over the weekend. We know that schedule changes are happening daily. This may actually lag what is current, but you have seen, for example, Hawaiian and Spirit eliminate all of their long-haul capacity, and Hawaiian has cut almost everything else. you are seeing other airlines dramatically drop both domestic and international service. What's interesting is, according to the Cirium data, Allegiant actually had a 0.3% increase, which unfortunately doesn't show up here, but go Allegiant. There's some good news out there. But all airlines are cutting back, and on average, for all of the airlines in the US, it's a cut of a third for domestic capacity and 60% for international. This is another example of the DO schedule mapper that is American's route network from May of 2019, their international route network versus what's currently in the schedule for May 2020, which may even be smaller by the time we get to May. So we are seeing all of the US airlines act prudently to reduce their flying, but it's scary and it's alarming, and we've never ever seen anything like this before. Data from Deutsche Bank shows that a lot of airlines have 3 or more months of operating cash on hand, but looks can be deceiving. If airlines are now going to have to refund money to travelers as opposed to giving travel credits, that's going to take a toll on it. If airlines continue to fly flights with no passengers and no cargo, that's going to take a toll. So we expect to see airlines continue to cull their schedules, ground more airplanes, continue to go to their employees with programs to reduce the cash burn, whether it's voluntary leaves of absence, voluntary separation packages, or other actions to reduce the financial burden on the airlines and stretch out that cash on hand. Obviously, once they start to receive government financial support, this will help, especially for the cash grants to employees. But there's no question. We know some airlines' finances may not be strong enough without loans to weather this storm. Hopefully, I'm going to be proven wrong on that. I would like to see every airline that goes into this crisis come out of it. There's something I'd like to point out about Delta and United. These two airlines have unique advantages that not all of their competitors may, and that is that last year, both airlines negotiated new long-term contracts with their co-brand credit card partners, United with Chase Bank, Delta with American Express. United's agreement is a 9-year agreement. Delta has an 11-year agreement with Amex. The advantage that this gives them is they've already negotiated terms for the sale of massive volumes of loyalty point credits, United Mileage Plus points, Delta SkyMiles points, and that my understanding is that these airlines may have gone to their partners and say, hey, would you please buy more credits than normal so we can get a cash infusion? If that is the case, that could help bring in cash to these airlines to bolster their operating cash on hand, and obviously something the airlines need, while further cementing the relationship with these two companies. There's been no public announcement of this. This is our hypothesis, but after having spoken with some people within both airlines, we believe that this hypothesis is accurate. Now, we're all interested in what the recovery is going to be. Healthy airlines are going to require a healthy and confident society, plus a healthy economy to recover. One thing that is important, we can't rush this, no matter how much we want to. None of us here who are not doctors know how this will play. I've spoken with biologists, I've spoken with epidemiologists about this. They are learning this, obviously. Certainly, we are rushing the development of potential treatments. We all want to see that, but there has to be time, there has to be the tests, and we don't want to make sure, we want to be sure nothing that we would use as a treatment would ultimately be harmful. But nothing is going to happen until public health policies and guidelines, and importantly, medical care availability are in place. When you have communities like New York and other cities struggling to care for the people who are sick in their communities, you don't want people coming into your community to visit who are non-essential travelers. People aren't going to want to go somewhere until they're confident that public health is better, that the risk of infection has been substantially reduced, and heaven forbid something happens, that if they need medical care, they can get it. Something to bear in mind with the US, there will probably be a lag between guidelines being relaxed and the availability of restorative treatments and preventative treatments. And obviously the US economy is going to factor in here, so will the economies of key trading partners and other international markets. The US economy is going to recover just as it will from a health standpoint in a piecemeal basis. You may see some cities recover faster than others based on criteria and actions they took to suppress the virus, to flatten the curve, as we have all learned. But that also means that that is going to affect travel demand, travel activity. People are going to want to go to places that are safe, and importantly for airlines, they're going to want to avoid places that have not yet been declared safe. So if an airline has a hub in a city that is still, or a state that is still considered to be high risk, that hub may not be a viable connecting point for that carrier for the time being. Business travel recovery will hinge on duty of care, and we've spoken with more than 24 travel managers. Actually, I have a little data I'll share in a minute, and they're all telling me that until they are confident and can fulfill their duty of care responsibilities to their colleagues, they're going to continue to keep a clamp down on business travel. And leisure travel recovery is going to be uneven. It is going to be based, importantly, not just on our physical well-being and our financial well-being, but also our emotional state. There's been some discussion about will we screen people for their health in a from a public policy standpoint, and will airlines and other travel companies, for that matter, screen travelers? This morning, the National in the UAE published that Etihad is going to trial a COVID-19 detecting technology that will measure temperature and heartbeat and some other physical characteristics to try to determine if someone might have COVID-19. The challenge is that, as great as this is, it's not going to be perfect because there may be other symptoms of this. But there are a lot of issues out there. Right now, cities are struggling to test people. If we are going to have screening standards, who will create them, and who will issue those guidelines and standards? Will it be on a global level? Will it be an organization like the World Health Organization, or do we need a group like ICAO and a group like IATA to help lead this for the airline industry? Who will pay for this? Who will administer the testing? How will we see countries participate? How will we see cities do this? How to ensure the accuracy? What is that shelf life of the test? How is that data going to be used and shared and protected? How do you use this to protect against unfair discrimination? And if this is going to be administered at an airport, where and what are the implications on passenger processing, which can already be a bottleneck? So things that we'll just have to address here. Now, one thing that I think is important for all of us to understand, we love to travel, and this isn't going to change. We want to travel. There are a lot of people out there posting on social media how they miss traveling and how they want to get out there. Something that we need to remember is the traveler is going to be the same as they were, and yet very, very different. We believe, and we are at the point now where we feel we can do some consumer research, and which will start soon. We believe that there are going to be 6 factors that will influence travelers going forward. Some of these existed before the virus, some are new. Hygiene and health, personal hygiene and the public health and cleanliness of the surroundings we're in, whether it's a restaurant or an airport or an airplane or anything, is going to be paramount over the next probably year to two at least. Consumers are coming out of this after being told to shelter in place for a month, 2 months, maybe even longer. So there's going to be an issue of fear and trust around our immediate surroundings, public spaces, brands, and more. There's already been a strong sense of you only live once. We believe that this event is going to intensify that among, and regardless of what, it's not going to be a grand living for everybody, but as we recover from this, people, I think, are going to want to have unique experiences. They are going to savor what they are doing and want to get back to enjoying travel. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, again, doing things with friends, the importance of friendship, the importance of living for the day and taking nothing for granted. The importance of price and value is not going to go away, and obviously will be more important as we come out of this, given the financial impact this is going to be taking on everybody, on national economies, on our immediate financial well-being. But I think something that is going to emerge also will be a greater sense of joy and gratitude. Joy and appreciation for everyday things, simply going to, for example, a retail shop or a supermarket without having to wait in line. Joy to hug somebody when that's ready, but also appreciation for the places we see and the travel experiences that we will again all start to have hopefully very soon. In talking with travel managers, and this is an online survey we just did earlier in March, what they expect is a steady state, but there's a lot of uncertainty. Now, this was a study of just 26 travel managers, which, given the spending, is pretty reasonable. They are all US based, though many of these work for multinational companies or global companies. Of the 26, the majority expect at this point that their travel activity, business travel activity for their companies and their business travel spend will not change meaningfully. But as you can see, there are a lot who think that they may cut back, and there are a critical mass who at this point admit they're just not sure. So this is something to keep our eye on. Factors that will guide it will include how long shelter-in-place orders exist, how long the focus remains on only essential travel. Again, as I said earlier, duty of care and the state of each company's business and the industry they're in. I'm asked a lot, where are airlines going to focus their post-recovery investment area? I've spoken with a number of airlines around the world, and what I'm hearing is, no surprise, areas that are going to lead to revenue generation or efficiency. So the so-called soft product investments, lounges, seats, uniform, brand, things like that, those are not going to be the areas that are going to be emphasized coming out of this, not initially anyway. What I'm being told is airlines are going to look at investment in software and technologies that can help them make more money. For example, several airlines have said that they're continuing to explore continuous pricing software, obviously investment in digital direct channels, especially mobile. I continue to hear that they know they need to invest in retailing and merchandising, and many admitted they weren't where they were beforehand, and they know that this will mean playing even more of a catch-up game. Biometrics is going to be something that they are looking at. Customer data and personalization, ancillary products. Several airlines have said that they know they need to rethink their ancillary strategies and perhaps may have to expand those. I'm going to but I will discuss that in a moment about the challenge they all face. A lot of interest in lower cost alternative payment solutions and co-brand credit card marketing. One of the challenges here, though, is airlines already were under investing in technology going into this virus. As an industry, we tended to invest 20%, sometimes even less in technology as a percentage of revenue compared to other industry averages. Airline technology departments often have a lot of contractors. In some cases, it's twice or even more the number of people who are contractors working in IT departments versus full-time employees. And many of those contractors were let go when the crisis began and airlines looked for ways to cut back. So we are coming from behind already. We've been investing, we've been making progress. Now we are going to be even further behind, and depending on the state of recovery, my concern as the analyst is we're going to struggle. So if you are selling technology, if you are selling ancillary products, if you are selling any of these solutions, something that you're going to have to be willing to consider is how can you make it easy as possible, as well, of course, as inexpensive for that airline to install it, test it, and operate it. Will you be willing to change your commercial model so that there is shared risk but shared benefit as well? We're going to really have to rethink this, and we're going to have to support airline partners as they come, and for that matter, airport partners too, as we all come back. What's the recovery timeline? We think for the US, it's going to be roughly 2, possibly more years. We see 5 groups coming back in the first 6 to 9 months after the virus is declared, quote, under control. That doesn't mean cured. We're going to see what we call the tiptoe travelers. They're going to be the boldest, mostly leisure or personal travel, likely people who earn the most money because they're, the people who have money going into this will be more likely to have it coming out. Cabin fever escapees, mostly travel from within North America, certainly some long haul. Pioneers will see more business travelers. They will lead that part of the recovery. Mind you, this will probably be a stair step. There'll be some overlap. These are our estimates on the timelines, by the way. We may be proven wrong. And as we go forward from pioneers to fast followers, you can see that there is a more mass market adoption of travel. Within a year, we should start to see, I hope, near normal volume of business travelers, more of a return to premium travel. Then we go into what I call mainstream travelers within 16 to 24 months, where we are hopefully at between 80 and 90% of previous leisure travel volume. And we start to see a lot more millennials and Gen X travelers participating. By, I hope within 2 years, we are back to normal. But again, a lot depends on where we are going into this. If economists saying we're going to have 30+% unemployment rates in the US are correct, well, all bets are off. So that's it for my portion. Thank you for your participation here. We're going to make the slides available. We'll send those out soon. Daniel, we can take questions.
Yes, we can. Thank you for that, Henry. That was a really good summary of obviously a complex crisis. So thank you for your insights and what's happening on the ground in the US at the moment. We do have a few minutes left, so I can get through a few of the questions. First of all, we've got a question from Michael, who asks, in terms of recovery over the long term, do you see a difference between domestic and international travel?
Yes, so for North America, for the US, I'm going to classify domestic as including Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean. I think that travelers will feel more comfortable traveling domestically. I think business travel will resume more within the US. International is more complex. It's going to be a function first of the removal of travel restrictions between the US and any international destination, and they're removing any restrictions on US travelers to their countries. For example, we saw China close its borders to all foreign travelers a little more than a week ago. It also comes down to comfort. The perception among leisure travelers of this health safety of that destination. Italy today announced that they're considering removing the national lockdown May 4th. But for international travel, it's going to hinge on duty of care. Does the travel manager, does a company's corporate security department feel it is safe for a person to visit a country? And importantly, can they get that person out of there if there is an emergency? That will also be important to leisure travelers. So from an airline industry standpoint, from a route network standpoint, I think what you will see happen is airlines, as they build back their international route networks, will focus on their top tier destinations, hubs of their partner airlines where they have them, most popular leisure destinations first. It may take time for some of the second tier markets or routes from non-hub gateways to return to international, if those even come back.
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, on the duty of care as well. We've seen that recently in the UK with British Airways, some concerns there. We've got a question here from Jessica, who is asking, just regarding, with so much pushback from consumers on proactive marketing because of the current climate, what do you think would be the best approach to start getting consumers to act on future travel?
That's a really good question, Jessica. So some airlines have continued some of their marketing. And yesterday, I received an offer from an airline offering a 100% bonus mile if I bought frequent flyer miles from it. First time I've ever seen a 100% bonus offer.
Did you take it?
I think not yet, because I was preparing for this, Daniel. I was a slave.
Sorry.
So anyway. I think anything that talks about the future is fair game. So, for example, a subscription, going out there with travel bonus packs, something that promises hey, look, we know we're going to come out of this, and we will work with you. Airlines that are offering flexible waiver terms on and booking terms for future travel, I think have an advantage. We need to encourage people to start looking forward. And I think what will help is, as we start to see green shoots of good news, fewer cases of people becoming sick, stories of people leaving hospitals, things like that, that will help the psychology of people. Stock markets going up, good news like that will help. Talking with some travel agents, I'm hearing them saying, hey, look, we're starting to see people book travel for August, September, and the fall for personal travel, and in some cases, high-end travel. Don't come to me with stupid partner marketing offers. You're going to, though, have to talk about your brand and health. And Delta has said they want to own clean, and they've even created a phrase, Delta Clean. So I turned it into a hashtag. But that's fair, and that is something we're going to have to do. I would encourage people to go back and take a look at what United and American did after 9/11, where they ran some beautiful advertising to instill faith in and trust in their brands while acknowledging the awful things that occurred to them, but to reinstate trust in their brands. This is going to be trust in your brand time. So you may have to do some advertising that you haven't done before, TV and image advertising, to restore faith that travel is safe, travel is good, but we've also seen airlines say, hey, we're extending your frequent flyer status. All of that is to the good.
Yeah. Very last question here. Unfortunately, that's all we'll have time for. So it's regarding the Regional Airline Association. This is a question from Bernie, by the way. That association says that although 100% of receipts under the worker relief provisions must be used exclusively to fund worker payroll and benefits, initial Treasury guidance requiring warrants would seem to exclude most regional airlines from participating by virtue of their underlying corporate structures. So his question is, obviously, as regional airlines provide more than 70% of the service in more than a quarter of all the states, how do you think they can access support funding?
That's a really good question. And first, I'm not a politician, which is probably a very good thing. And I'm not obviously involved in the structure of this. My understanding, as I read this, is there is some way for the parent airline to assist a regional airline partner that may operate in a co-branded relationship or have some other business relationship. Again, I think that the RAA and its members can make a very compelling point based on what Bernie observed. You know, regional airlines in the U.S. provide a 70% or so of capacity in some cases, and in some cases maybe the only air service into some of these communities. So it may be that the way this will work is the parent airline would do some negotiating with some of the money allocated for its partner. It may be that they bring their partner to the table with them when they're negotiating with the government.
No.
And it's possible that they may also advocate on behalf of their partners to the government saying, look, we need these guys to be healthy because without them, we can't do the job you want us to do.
Yeah, yeah. And as I mentioned, Henry, huge thank you for doing this. I think we've got another 10 questions lined up, but unfortunately we're going to have to wrap things up here. As I mentioned earlier, if you do have a question for Henry, just contact me directly at daniel.boyle@terrapin.com, and we'll make sure that question gets to Henry and he'll get back to you with an answer there. But a big thank you, Henry, for joining us. Really enjoyed that. I hope you did too.
Thank you. I did, and I thank everybody for your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get all. And everybody, please stay safe, be well, and we will get through this.
Thank you, Henry. And everybody, as I mentioned earlier, please make sure that you do sign up for next week's session looking at the APAC market with Cheng Li. There is a limit on how many of you can join live, so please make sure that you get signed up. And thank you for joining us.